Good morning everyone. Basahan tayo ng ating libro guys. Kapwa ko Filipino, magbasa na tayo ng ating history. History of the Filipino People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Today is 25 February 2023. History of the Filipino People, Part 5, The Warriors. Topic number 22, The Japanese Occupation. Nandito tayo sa paragraph Economic Conditions. Basa. Economic conditions. Hours before the Japanese entered Manila, they received masses, including some of the supposedly educated, suddenly and brutally attacked all grocery and sari-sari stores, carrying away all they could lay hands on, including such inedible things as beds, pillows, chairs, and even wooden benches. Men, women, and children armed with lead pipes and clubs rushed to the attack, howling and laughing. Doors were torn down and the contents of stores looted with gusto. The policemen were helpless, their pistols having been surrendered. To City Hall. To avoid any untoward incidents with the Japanese who were about to enter Manila, not having anything worthwhile to do, some policemen joined the cry and the tumult and went home with some loot. The ruthless looting was not confined in Manila. The same lawlessness and barbarism were exhibited in the suburbs. Within a few days, the looted goods were seen being peddled around in the streets and markets. The Japanese occupation was infamous not only because of the ferocity of the military conquerors, but also the Filipinos as a whole had lost their social and moral balance. In Capas, where the Filipino soldiers were concentrated, thousands among the courageous Bataan defenders died not only because of malnutrition and the outbreak of diseases, but also because some of the Filipino army physicians conscientiously denied the suffering soldiers the medicine necessary to relieve them of their pain. When the Japanese authorities allowed the relatives and friends of the surrendered soldiers to send medicine and food, the same army physicians conveniently set aside the Hippocratic oath and engaged in the sale of food and medicine, particularly sulpataceous yung gamot to guys, particularly sulpataceous, sulfanilamide, and quinine, which were in the first place not for them but for the ailing soldiers. The tragedy of Capas consisted in the betrayal of the sick soldiers by their fortunate comrades in arms. Relatives and friends of sick soldiers who had thoughtfully sent them food and medicine believed they had done a good deed and hoped that somehow their unfortunate loved ones would be released in good physical condition. They were mistaken. The merchant physicians, at least those involved in the racket, kept the medicine, and the irony of it all, sold it at astronomical prices in genuine Philippine pesos to the very ones to whom the medicine was sent. Those who failed to receive their salaries before the surrender and consequently had no money died miserably. When the prisoners were released, they were either too sick to complain or too afraid to air their grievances. The dastardly crime was swamped by the urgent economic necessities and was soon forgotten. The economic activities during the occupation were necessarily limited. Industry, commerce, and trade suffered a setback. Work animals decreased, and agriculture, at least for some time, languished. Horses, cars, trucks, and other means of transportation. Horses, cars, trucks, and other means of transportation were confiscated by the Japanese. In exchange, the owners received a piece of paper with unreadable scribblings on it. The only consolation in receiving such pieces of paper was that they could be used as cigarette paper. Many haciendas remained idle for a time. Then the Japanese planters came and planted them to cotton, a commodity needed by the Japanese warlords. Rice production sank to a new low, and the limited quantities produced were taken by the Japanese military to feed their men. The natural upshot was the prohibited price of rice. The people of Manila, not having an inch of agricultural land to their credit, suffered most. The lowly farmers hithered to look down upon by the bourgeoisie, and the absentee landlords rose in importance. It was a common experience to see the best furniture of the city being carted to the rural areas. The hitherto held capitalist employees of Manila and other cities had to part with their pieces of furniture in exchange of a sack of rice. For a time, then, the yokels enjoyed the finer things of life. The shy barrio damsel now could be seen looking at herself in a large mirror of a narrow aparador, imagining herself in the place of the young society debutante who had probably spent much time admiring herself before that very same mirror. The lowly takba and baol, repositories of yellow dresses, were replaced by the best aparador. The old-fashioned dresses and shirts, too, were superseded by polo shirts and modern dresses bought from the second-hand dealers on Bambang and Anak ng Bayan streets. In some cases, these dresses, polo shirts, and trousers were stolen from the interred at La Loma and the North cemeteries. Farmers who had lost a tooth or two now could afford to have gold teeth, the gold in most cases having been extracted by ghouls from the teeth of the dead in the cemeteries. In the streets, especially on Ascaraga near the Dulong Bayan Market, men and women, mostly women, called out aloud, "Baka may gintong ngipin kayo riyan, baka may gintong ngipin kayo." "Do you have gold teeth with you? Do you have gold teeth?" Meaning that they would buy your gold teeth. This demand for gold led the conscienceless and the unscrupulous to dig the graves of destroy the tombs of the innocent dead in cemeteries. Natatawa naman ako dito. Pero mga guys, tatanggalin nyo yung ginto sa ngipin ba? Oso kasi yan nung araw eh. Mayaman kasi sila sa ginto nung araw. So, nilalagay sa ngipin. Okay, ulit. This demand for gold led the conscienceless and unscrupulous to dig the graves or destroy the tombs of the innocent dead in the cemeteries for gold or for polo shirts and trousers. The desecration of the graves, punishable with death in pre-Spanish times, became common, resulting naturally in the release of the indescribable odor of decayed and decaying bodies. Kadiri naman to. Yung sa mga patay, guys, kinukuha nila yung ginto tsaka mga damit. Because there was practically no production, most of the people engaged in the buy and sell business. Jewelry commanded handsome prices, particularly to those who had amassed fortunes in big buy and sell businesses. How many sacks of flour do you have? Do you have polo shirts for sale? Anything could be sold and purchased at prices which return good profits. The Japanese unwittingly encouraged this kind of business by manufacturing what the Filipinos called Mickey Mouse money. The result was inflation. One One had to carry a bayong or small sack full of Mickey Mouse money to buy a few gantas of rice. Everything was sold at an astronomical price. A box of ordinary nuts cost in 1944 more than 100 Mickey Mouse pesos. The Japanese, however, tried to cushion the impact of their occupation on the economy of the country by distributing goods to the people at prices determined by the military authorities. But the Filipinos who had learned much from the Chinese became masters in the art of going around the law. A box of nuts from a distributing center cost no more than 10 Mickey Mouse centavos. Outside, the recipients of the Russians sold the innocent box for, at the beginning of the occupation, 30 centavos. Cigarettes, too, became rare. American cigarettes commanded the highest prices. In these circumstances, those who could not afford to buy at such prices manufactured their own cigarettes out of the dried papaya leaves. Oh, papaya leaves pala yun. Cigarette paper disappeared and the people used the newspapers and books for their purpose. So common was this practice that wags boasted, "I am smoking the Encyclopedia Britannica." The more imaginative among the Filipinos manufactured two kinds of cigarettes, the doctored cigarettes, which were not so bad, and the American cigarettes such as Camel, Chesterfield, and Lucky Strike. Malabar, Rizal was the manufacturing center of these American cigarettes. The deception was so complete that no one could distinguish except the manufacturers themselves between a genuine Chesterfield and a fake one. Even the taste was so much alike that the Malaban impostors got away with their trade for quite a time. As to coffee and tea, the Filipinos had them too. Coffee could be had at second hand, that is, the used grains of coffee were dried in the sun and sold to those who were willing to be suckers. Ersatz or substitute, ayun dyan, inom tayo mamaya. Ersatz or substitute coffee or tea was common. Mango leaves with boiled became the substitute for tea. Oh, yung mango leaves pala pwede rin. Mango leaves when boiled became the substitute for tea. The best substitute for coffee were toasted rice and corn. The uncooked rice or corn was toasted to deep brown, boiled, and served hot. With sugar, the deception was complete. Ang daming mangga sa Pilipinas, guys. Mag-boil lang tayo nito pala ng leaves. Pwede ng tea. Pwede ng tsaa. In view of the scarcity of food, President Laurel appealed to the people to plant every inch of ground to vegetables. The people hated him and soon the sidewalks of Manila bloomed with vegetables. The low places where mosquitoes found an ideal habitat became a source of food. The lowly kangkong, the aquatic vegetable, saved thousands of lives, for it contains substances vital to physical growth. Food production campaign was intensified under the direction of the National Food Production Campaign Office. The Economic Planning Board gave much of its time to the problem of production and procurement of rice and other prime necessities. As a result, the Bigasang Bayan, popularly known as BIBA, was organized to control the procurement and distribution of rice and other cereals. Consumers' Cooperative was created in Manila to allow private initiative to help BIBA in its functions. To ensure equitable distribution of prime commodities, Laurel created the National Distribution Corporation, popularly known as NADISCO. All these steps were designed to alleviate the people's sufferings. It is to the credit of Laurel and his colleagues in the government that faced with what appeared as insurmountable tasks. They remained loyal to the people and worked hard to soften the impact of the Japanese occupation on the moral and physical nerves of the Filipinos. It is easy to criticize and condemn him and his colleagues from a distance of 10,000 miles where there had not been any semblance of war, but those who remained knew better. Millions of those who suffered and confronted death face to face and survived were and are grateful to Laurel and his colleagues. They may have committed some mistakes They may have committed some mistakes which were inevitable under the circumstances, but their loyalty, patriotism, and unselfish devotion to duty were beyond reproach. Patrioters who enjoyed the easy and good life in the United States during the Grim War, who never knew what enemy occupation meant, who spoke boldly of freedom and democracy behind gleaming desks in air-conditioned rooms, who had no imagination to put themselves in the position of men in occupied territories. In short, men who had a false sense of pride and prejudice were quick to condemn acts they never understand. Such a man who enjoyed the safety and luxury of the American mainland during the war came to the Philippines with the liberation forces, and looking over Malacanang, boasted that those who collaborated with the Japanese would be jailed. An old man heard him, and turning to him with a benign smile said softly, "Amang, had you been here during the enemy occupation, you would have been the editor of the Japanese propaganda paper." Bukas na itong social conditions, guys. Bye everyone. God bless.